Members, the House is resumed. I now call on Members' Order of the Day number 1.
Electoral Disqualification of Convicted Prisoners Amendment Bill, second reading.
Call on the Honourable Member Paul Quinn.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Electoral Disqualification of Convicted Prisoners Amendment Bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, when this bill was reported back to the House, there was some publicity about it, and I want to advise the House and yourself, Mr Speaker, that at the appropriate time in the committee stages I will be introducing a supplementary order paper, and I want to acknowledge, Mr Speaker, the fulsome apology that I received from Parliamentary Counsel, who acknowledged that the oversight was in fact theirs. So I think it is honourable, and I would like to thank them for acknowledging their concerns. I want to also thank the Select Committee for taking its time and considering this bill and giving it due consideration. And I have to say that in being reported back, I note the Select Committee report contains, Mr. Speaker, a couple of minority reports, and I have to admit that I was somewhat surprised at the inclusion of the minority reports, because when I made my oral submission to the Select Committee, not one question did I get from members of the opposition, that is the Labor and the Greens, not one question. And in fact, one had to say that at the end of my verbal presentation, my oral submission, there was unanimity in support for this particular bill. So I am surprised. But when I sit and examine the minority reports, I have sat down and I actually have examined the minority reports, and I fear, Mr Speaker, that it is fair to say that they focus on about three particular areas. One is they criticise the bill in respect to the Bill of Rights. The second is in terms of United Nations edicts, issues around international law, and of course then there were various submissions from the boffins that hide away in government-paid-for ivory towers, and the Mandarin Chardonnay socialists that masquerade as independent advisers. Now, I do not take much notice. I do not take much notice of UN edicts, and in fact I'm more concerned about New Zealand law than I am international law. That's right. That said, I do note that in fact, in terms of the countries, the two countries that we consider to be the guardians of democracy, namely the United States and the UK, both those countries in fact have laws which reflect my bill. And so I say that in fact if they do it, then in fact it really must, it stands on good stead that we have a similar arrangement, Mr Speaker. So let us turn to the Bill of Rights. And there was much ado about the Attorney General's report. And of course, Section 12, Clause 12 of the Bill of Rights provides a guarantee that everyone is entitled to a vote. But Section 5, there is a caveat on that, and that is in fact in respect of Section 5. And Section 5 enables that notwithstanding what the Bill of Rights, a clause in the Bill of Rights says, that may be overridden in respect of the reasonable limitation of that right if the test stands up. And this, in fact, is where I disagree with the Attorney-General's report. But I want to go back to the Royal Commission report, because this is where this particular current law has its genesis, Mr. Speaker, and because the change was brought about by them on the premise that, in my view, and I think it's fair to say, in my view, they took the position that people get sent to prison for misdemeanours. And this is where, in fact, we differ. They then went on to say, and I quote, "Punishment for a serious crime against the community may properly involve a further forfeiture of some rights, such as the right to vote." And having made that statement, they then pulled a figure out of the year and made it 3 years as the test. And the reason, if the members of the opposition would like to go and read the Royal Commission report, which I have studied assiduously, they will find that the basis for the 3 years was to mirror the basis for people living overseas continuously. Now, I find no connection between people that have lived overseas continuously for 3 years losing their vote and prisoners having served more than 3 years in prison losing their vote. And particularly when you think about why people overseas supposedly should lose their vote. And the reason is because it is claimed they are not informed about the politics of this country. Well, I say it's time that we dragged ourselves into the 21st century, because people read the web pages every day. They read newspapers. They keep themselves fully informed. And so they should be allowed to vote. So the point I'm making, and I'll get to you, Mr. Hipkin, in a minute. Just hold on. The point I'm making is that, in fact, that the 3 years was a line in the sand, and from my point of view, that line in the sand, in fact, should be from the day you go to prison. And this side of the House will, in fact, promulgate that argument. Now, let me just reflect back, take a step back, and remind, Mr. Speaker, members of the House that the cornerstone of our justice system is the fact that we be judged by our peers. That's the cornerstone of our justice system. Well, let me tell you, I don't see ivory tower boffins as my peer.
With those Mandarin socialists.
I don't see Mandarin socialists as my peers. I see the ordinary people on the street. And where I bring Mr. Hipkins in is that I have spoken to 50 people at an assembly in great power, and all those people support this bill. So I just like to conclude, Mr. Speaker, by saying that, in fact, the people support this bill. And that's why I am proud to stand and lead the second reading of this debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is, will the motion be agreed to?